You're tired of pretending you're satisfied with crumbs, aren't you? Of smiling when someone talks about money like it's something dirty, while inside you know you deserve so much more. Of accepting that money doesn't buy happiness when the people saying that have never had to choose between paying the electric bill or buying groceries. I see you there, nodding along, but screaming inside that you want a different life. I am Solomon, the man who had everything you can imagine and much more. Palaces that made kings weep with envy, gold that weighed more than entire mountains, power to move nations with a single word. And I was also the man who discovered, in the most painful way possible, that having all of this without wisdom is like drinking salt water when you're thirsty. The more you drink, the thirstier you become. I'm here to tell you something that will hurt at first, but could save the rest of your life. Poverty is not an accident. It's a choice. A choice you make every day when you wake up and decide to keep thinking like the poor, acting like the poor, waiting for someone to come save you. And before you get offended, hear me out to the end, because I'm going to show you exactly how to break this cycle. True wealth doesn't begin in your pocket. It begins in your mind. And if you don't change what's in your head, you could win the lottery tomorrow and be broke again in 5 years. I've seen it happen. I've lived it myself. In this video, I'm not going to give you magic formulas or empty promises. I'm going to teach you the same principles that made me the most prosperous man in history. But I'm also going to tell you about my biggest mistakes, because they taught me that wealth without wisdom is a curse disguised as a blessing. You'll discover why you keep planting seeds of poverty, expecting to harvest fruits of abundance. Why your prayers for money aren't answered when you yourself don't believe you deserve to be prosperous. And most importantly, you'll understand that there's a huge difference between wanting to be rich and deciding to be rich. If you've made it this far, it's not by accident. Something inside you knows you deserve more, that you were made for more. But knowing isn't enough. You need to decide. You need to act. And you need to start now, because every day you spend pretending everything's fine is one less day to build the life you truly want. If this message touched something in you, if you feel it's time to stop playing at being poor, subscribe to this channel now, because what I'm going to share here isn't for everyone. It's only for those truly willing to change their lives, not just dream about it. Number 1. The true secret of wealth. Have you ever stopped to think why there are people who work 20 hours a day and remain broke, while others seem to touch everything and turn it to gold? Why some fight their entire lives against bills, while others prosper even in times of crisis? The answer will hurt, but it needs to be said. You're chasing money when you should be becoming worthy of it. I was Solomon, the man who had more wealth than any human being before or after me. When I asked God for wisdom, He gave me much more than that. He gave me gold, silver, livestock, lands, power over entire nations. But here's the secret most people never understand. The wealth didn't come because I asked for it. The wealth came because I became someone capable of managing it. The true secret of wealth isn't in gold or silver. It's in understanding. It's wisdom that transforms 5 loaves into food for multitudes. It's applied knowledge that makes a seed become a forest. Money is just the result, never the cause. Imagine 2 men digging wells in the desert. The first digs desperately, sweating, breaking his back, but always in the wrong place. The second studies the terrain, observes the signs, understands where the water is, and digs only once, in the right place. Who will find water? The one who tries harder or the one who understands better? Most people live like the first man. They work non-stop, do overtime, multiply their activities, but never stop to understand where they're digging. They remain poor not from lack of effort, but from lack of wisdom. They keep planting in the wrong soil, watering with tears, and wondering why the harvest never comes. I saw rich men become poor overnight because they had money, but no understanding. I also saw simple men become prosperous because they decided to seek wisdom before seeking fortune. Money without knowledge is like water in your hands. It slips through your fingers before you realize it. Here's the truth that will transform your life. God isn't holding back your prosperity. You just haven't become the person capable of sustaining it yet. You haven't developed the character, the discipline, the understanding necessary to manage what you so desire. Stop chasing money like a dog chasing its own tail. Start pursuing wisdom. Invest in knowledge. Learn how money works, how it multiplies, how it's preserved. Become someone money seeks, not someone who seeks money. Wealth is attracted to prepared minds, not to empty, outstretched hands. When you become worthy of the blessing finds you. When you develop the character to manage much, much will be given to you. But as long as you keep digging in the wrong place, you can sweat blood and won't find a single drop of prosperity. The question you need to ask yourself today isn't, when will I get rich? But rather, when will I become the person wealth seeks? Because the secret has always been this: you don't conquer prosperity, you become worthy of it. Number 2, the emptiness of a man full of possessions. Do you think being rich will solve all your problems? That having everything you want will fill that hole in your chest? I need to tell you about the loneliest night of my life, when I had absolutely everything and felt like the poorest man on earth. I was in my main palace, surrounded by pure gold on the walls, servants who attended to every movement of my eyes, women from the most beautiful of all nations around me. I had just finished another banquet where the food was worth more than a common worker's salary for entire years. And in the middle of all this abundance, I lay down in my royal bed and felt an emptiness so deep it seemed like it would swallow me alive. That night, God spoke to me something that forever changed how I viewed wealth. Solomon, he who doesn't govern himself is worse than one who loses a war. The man who conquers cities but doesn't conquer his own heart is more miserable than the beggar on the street. And that was exactly what I was living. I had power to move mountains, but no strength to say no to my own desires. I could buy anything in the world, but couldn't buy peace for my soul. I ruled millions of people, but was a slave to my own impulses. Imagine a king sitting on a golden throne, but chained by his own vices. That was me. Rich on the outside, poor on the inside. Prosperous in the pocket, miserable in the heart. And with each passing day, each material conquest only increased the emptiness. Because I discovered the most painful truth about wealth: it amplifies who you already are. If you're an empty person inside, wealth will only make that emptiness bigger. If you don't have self-control, money will give you more ways to destroy yourself. If you don't have purpose, abundance will just be a heavier weight on your shoulders. I had everything a man could dream of and discovered that without wisdom to manage it, without character to sustain it, without purpose to direct it, wealth transforms into a curse. It's like putting a weapon in a child's hands. It might seem like power, but it's actually danger. Many people who hear me speak want my wealth, but aren't willing to carry the weight that comes with it. They want the glory, but don't want the responsibility. They want the power, but don't want to pay the price of self-control. The truth is that wealth without self-control destroys more lives than poverty. At least the poor have limits imposed by reality. The rich without wisdom have no limits at all, and that's where the danger lies. Before you ask God to give you wealth, ask yourself, are you prepared to carry this weight? Do you have control over your impulses? Do you have enough purpose not to get lost in the middle of so much abundance? Because if the answer is no, you're asking God to bless you with a curse. The question you need to answer today isn't whether you want to be rich. It's whether you're ready to be rich. Because having money without being prepared for it is like driving a race car without knowing how to drive. You might even go far, but the crash is just a matter of time. Build your character first. Develop self-control. Find your purpose. And then, when wealth comes, you'll have the foundation to sustain it, wisdom to manage it, and peace to enjoy it. Otherwise, you'll just be another miserable rich person in a golden bed, dreaming of the simplicity you lost. Number 3, the decision that separates abundance from misery. You want to know what's the real difference between those who live in scarcity and those who live in abundance. It's not luck, it's not wealthy family, it's not expensive education. It's a decision. A single decision that determines whether you'll spend your entire life justifying why you can't succeed or if you'll discover how to succeed. Poverty begins in the mind, long before it reaches the pocket. And it sustains itself with a collection of lies you tell yourself every day. I wasn't born for this. People with money are dishonest. God wants me to be humble, so I have to be poor. The rich don't enter heaven. Each of these phrases is a chain you put on your own feet. I heard these same lies when I was young. I saw people around me repeating these beliefs as if they were sacred truths, when in reality they were prisons they built themselves. And the most tragic thing is that many of these people were talented, intelligent, capable of much more, but were chained by their own thoughts. Let me tell you about two brothers I knew. They were born in the same house, had the same education, the same opportunities. The first grew up hearing his father say, "We are poor, we've always been poor, we'll always be poor. Rich people are all thieves." The second heard the same thing, but made a different decision. I'm not going to repeat this story. The first became exactly what they expected of him, an honest, hard-working, but poor man. He spent his entire life justifying his condition with his own honesty, as if being prosperous were synonymous with being dishonest. The second became one of the most respected merchants in the region, prosperous, generous, and full of integrity. The difference between them wasn't talent or opportunity. It was the decision to believe in something different. Here's the truth that will either free you or deeply disturb you. Money doesn't corrupt anyone. What corrupts is the absence of wisdom in the heart. Money only reveals who you really are. If you're greedy inside, wealth will amplify your greed. But if you have a wise and generous heart, wealth will amplify your ability to bless. God never said you had to be poor to be holy. On the contrary, He said you would be blessed to be a blessing. He promised you would be the head and not the tail, that you would lend to many nations and not borrow. But for this to happen, you need to stop sabotaging your own blessings with scarcity thinking. Real transformation begins when you stop seeing yourself as a victim of circumstances and start seeing yourself as the architect of your destiny. When you stop waiting for someone to come save you and understand that God has already given you everything you need to prosper. But this decision hurts. It hurts because you'll have to abandon the comfort zone of complaint. You'll have to stop blaming the government, the economy, the family, the boss, and take total responsibility for your life. You'll have to admit that your current condition is the result of your past decisions, and that your future condition depends on the decisions you're going to make from now on. The question I ask you today is simple, but will define the rest of your life. Will you continue repeating the mental patterns that brought you here, or will you have the courage to think differently? Will you continue embracing the beliefs that keep you small, or will you seek the understanding that will make you great? Because abundance isn't waiting for you to get ready. It's waiting for you to decide you're already ready. Prosperity isn't looking for someone perfect. It's looking for someone determined. And that person can be you, if you have the courage to break the invisible chains you created in your own mind. Number 4. The parable of the invisible tree. Let me tell you about two men who forever changed how I understand prosperity. It was a time of terrible drought in Israel, and two neighboring families were struggling to survive. Both had the same amount of seeds, the same portion of land, the same sun over their heads. The first man planted his seeds on a Monday. On Tuesday, he dug up the earth to see if it was already sprouting. On Wednesday, he watered abundantly and stayed watching all day, waiting to see some result. On Thursday, impatient because he saw nothing happening, he dug again to check the progress. On Friday, frustrated because he saw nothing happening, he pulled up the seeds and planted them somewhere else, thinking the soil was bad. The second man planted on the same day, but with a completely different mentality. He knew the seed had its own time. He watered every day, protected the earth from animals, removed weeds, but never disturbed the process. Month after month, when he saw no visible result, he continued caring for that land as if the world's greatest harvest was growing down there. 2 years later, the first man was bankrupt, without seeds, without hope, digging the earth in desperation, looking for explanations for his misery. The second was under the shade of giant fruit trees, harvesting more than he could carry, selling the excess to the entire region. This is the difference between those who prosper and those who remain poor. Wealth works exactly like a seed. It has an invisible gestation time that most people can't endure. They plant today and want to harvest tomorrow. And when they don't see immediate results, they conclude it doesn't work and give up. Have you ever wondered why you keep planting seeds of impatience and expecting to harvest fruits of abundance? Why you sow doubt and want to harvest confidence? Why you plant fear and expect courage to grow? The truth is that most of prosperity happens underground, in the dark, away from your eyes. For months, sometimes years, you see no progress at all. That's when most people give up. That's what separates those who become rich from those who stay poor forever. I learned this firsthand when I started building the temple. In the first year, it seemed like we were just moving stones from one place to another. Many workers complained, said it was impossible, that it would never be finished. But I knew that each stone placed in the right spot was a step toward the greatest work ever built by human hands. The wealth you so desire is already planted somewhere in your life. Maybe in the knowledge you're acquiring now. Maybe in the business you started that hasn't shown results yet. Maybe in the connections you're making. Maybe in the skill you're developing. But if you keep digging up the earth every day to see if it's sprouted yet, if you keep changing strategies every week because you don't see immediate results, if you keep doubting the process because it doesn't happen at the speed you want, you'll eternally be the first man in the story, always planting, never harvesting. The question you need to answer today is, what are you cultivating daily? Fear or wisdom? Doubt or knowledge? Impatience or perseverance? Because what you sow today, you'll reap tomorrow. There's no escaping this law. Stop digging up the earth of your projects. Stop checking every day if it's showing results yet. Stop comparing your process with others' results. Plant with wisdom, water with consistency, protect with discipline, and trust in the right time for harvest. Because prosperity isn't in a hurry, but it also doesn't accept excuses. It grows at the right pace, but only for those who have the patience to wait for it and the wisdom to cultivate it. And when it finally appears on the surface, you'll understand that every day of waiting was worth it. Every night of doubt, every moment you wanted to give up but chose to continue. Number 5. The prison of self-sabotage. I knew a man who spent 20 years of his life saving penny by penny, depriving himself of everything, living like a beggar to accumulate an amount he could invest. When he finally had enough to start a prosperous business, do you know what he did? He kept the money under his mattress and continued living like a poor man. When I asked why he didn't invest, he told me, "What if I lose everything? What if it goes wrong? What if I'm not capable? It's better to have little guaranteed than to risk having nothing." This man lived the rest of his life exactly as he started, with fear. And he died poor, even having had the opportunity to prosper in his hands. While he was protecting his money from risk, other men with fewer resources than his were building empires. While he was feeding the fear of losing, others were winning. And the tragedy is that he saw all of this happen. He saw his neighbors prosper with ideas he also had. He saw opportunities he could have taken pass by his door. This man reminded me of the parable Jesus told about the servant who buried his talent. He received an opportunity, but instead of multiplying it, he hid it out of fear. And when the master returned, he not only lost the opportunity, but lost even the little he had. Self-sabotage is the cruelest prison that exists, because you build the bars yourself and keep the keys. It's you who decides to stay outside the life you could have. It's you who chooses the security of mediocrity instead of the uncertainty of greatness. But let me tell you what the real tragedy of fear is. It doesn't protect you from anything. The man who's afraid of losing money investing ends up losing money to inflation. Those who are afraid to try entrepreneurship end up working for entrepreneurs their entire lives. Those who are afraid to risk end up being slaves to those who took risks. Fear isn't your protector, it's your executioner. It disguises cowardice as prudence. It calls laziness patience. It transforms lack of faith into wisdom. And while you're there, convincing yourself you're being responsible, life is passing by, opportunities are going away, and others are taking the place that could be yours. You know what's the difference between the rich and the poor? The rich person is afraid and does it anyway. The poor person is afraid and doesn't do it. Both feel the same thing, but only one has the courage to act despite the feeling. I was afraid when God called me to build the temple. It was an impossible project by human standards. No one had ever built something that size, with that level of detail, using those materials. I could have said, "Lord, what if I fail? What if I can't do it? What if it's too big for me?" But I understood something that changed my life. Faith isn't the absence of fear. Faith is the courage to act even with fear. Faith is looking at the impossible and starting anyway. Faith is taking the first step without seeing the entire staircase. Here's the truth that will free you. You'll never feel ready. You'll never have all the answers before you start. You'll never have total guarantee that it will work. If you wait until you feel brave to act, you'll wait forever. Courage doesn't come before action. Courage comes from action. You don't become brave first and then act. You act despite fear, and then discover you're braver than you imagine. The question you need to answer today is, will you continue being a slave to your own insecurities? Or will you have the courage to free yourself? Will you continue burying your talents for fear of losing them? Or will you multiply them even with fear? Because on the other side of your fear is the life you always wanted. On the other side of your comfort zone is the prosperity you so desire. But it won't come to you. You need to have the courage to go to it. Stop negotiating with mediocrity. Stop making deals with smallness. Stop accepting less than you deserve just because you're afraid to fight for what you want. Because life doesn't reward intention. It rewards action. And if you don't act, someone will act in your place. Number 6. The call to action aligned with God's will. Have you ever stopped to think why your prayers for prosperity aren't answered? Why you ask, beg, fast, but the financial situation remains the same? Let me tell you something that will shock many people. God isn't withholding your blessing. You're just not doing your part. There's a huge difference between asking God to bless you and positioning yourself to receive the blessing He's already released. Most people want God to do everything for them, as if prosperity were something that falls from heaven while you sit waiting. But that's not how it works. God called you to be the head and not the tail. He promised you would lend to many nations and not borrow. He said the blessing would reach you and overtake you. But all these promises come with a condition: obedience. And obedience isn't just following commandments. It's acting with the wisdom He gave you. When I asked for wisdom, God didn't just give me understanding. He gave me the responsibility to use that understanding to prosper. He didn't deposit gold in my bank account out of nowhere. He gave me wisdom to negotiate, to manage, to build, to lead. Wealth came because I applied what I received. There are people who've been praying for years for a better job, but aren't qualifying themselves for that job. There are people asking God to open doors of prosperity, but aren't developing the skills to walk through those doors when they open. There are people begging for opportunities, but when opportunity appears, they don't have the courage to take advantage of it. The truth is that God has already given you everything you need to prosper. He gave you intelligence, talents, time, access to knowledge, opportunities. What are you doing with all of this? Are you using it to grow, or are you wasting it while waiting for Him to do more? Let me ask you a question that will bother you. If God gave you today exactly the prosperity you're asking for, would you be prepared to manage it? Do you have the necessary financial knowledge? Do you have the discipline to sustain wealth? Do you have the character not to be corrupted by it? The prosperity you so desire won't come by chance. It comes as a consequence of your obedience, your discipline, your applied wisdom, your courage to act. God won't do for you what He's already equipped you to do alone. Here's what most people don't understand. You're not a servant begging for alms, you're an heir claiming your inheritance. But heirs have responsibilities. Heirs have to know how to manage what they inherit. Heirs have to act with dignity, befitting the position they occupy. Stop living like a servant when God made you an heir. Stop begging for crumbs when He prepared a banquet for you. Stop accepting mediocrity when He called you to excellence. But understand that all of this requires you to leave passivity and enter action. Prosperity isn't a prize for those who pray the most. It's a consequence for those who act with wisdom. It's not a blessing for those who are most spiritual. It's a result for those who are most obedient. And obedience isn't sitting waiting for God to perform miracles. It's using the resources He's already given you to build the life He planned for you. The question you need to answer today is, will you continue living like a servant begging for favors? Or will you assume your identity as an heir and claim what's rightfully yours? Will you continue waiting for God to do everything for you? Or will you use what He's already given you to do your part? Because prosperity isn't waiting for you to pray more. It's waiting for you to act better. It's not waiting for you to be holier. It's waiting for you to be wiser. It's not waiting for a miracle. It's waiting for a decision. And this decision needs to be made today. Because every day you spend in passivity is one less day to build the prosperous future God has already approved for you. Stop asking and start building. Stop waiting and start acting, because the kingdom of heaven isn't for the passive, it's for the violent who take it by force. Number 7. Solomon's greatest regret. If I could go back in time and change one thing in my life, do you know what it would be? It wouldn't be having less wealth, less power, or less fame. It would be keeping my heart close to God when all of that came to me, because I learned in the most painful way possible that having everything and losing God's presence is being left with nothing. Let me tell you about the day everything started to crumble. I was at the height of my prosperity, negotiating with kings from distant nations, closing deals that multiplied my wealth every day. And in the middle of one of these negotiations, a king offered me a political alliance that would involve me marrying his daughter. It was a perfect deal from a human standpoint. More power, more protection, more wealth. But there was a problem. This alliance would distance me from the principles God had established for me. At the moment of decision, I had to choose between pleasing God or pleasing men, and I chose wrong. I thought I could manage both things. I thought I could keep God in one corner of my life and do human business in the rest. I thought that since I was already prosperous, already wise, already blessed, I could relax my convictions. What a terrible mistake. From that day on, each decision became easier to justify. If I had already made one concession, why not make another? If I had already allied with one pagan king, why not ally with others? If I had already allowed one strange influence in my life, why not allow a few more? And that's how the wisest man on earth became the most foolish man. It wasn't all at once. It was one wrong choice after another, each one seeming small, each one seeming justifiable, until I looked around and no longer recognized who I had become. Wealth kept increasing, power kept growing, but inside, I was dying, because I had lost the only thing that gave meaning to everything I had, God's presence. And without it, all the gold in the world became just cold metal. Here's the lesson that almost cost me everything. Money without spiritual direction becomes a curse. Prosperity without the fear of the Lord becomes destruction. Human wisdom without divine wisdom is pure foolishness. And no matter how much you have, if you don't have God, you have nothing. I saw this happen to many rich men throughout my life. They started well, with pure hearts and right intentions. But when prosperity came, when temptations increased, when offers became irresistible, they made the same choice I made. They traded divine alliance for human alliances, and they all paid the same price I paid. They didn't necessarily lose money, but they lost peace. They didn't lose power, but they lost purpose. They didn't lose position, but they lost presence. And they discovered, as I discovered, that success without meaning is just a sophisticated form of failure. The question I ask you today, and that I wish someone had asked me back then, is if God gave you today everything you're asking for, would you be prepared not to lose yourself? If He blessed you with all the prosperity you desire, would you have the strength to continue obeying His principles? Because prosperity will test your character in ways poverty never tested. It will put temptations in front of you that you never imagined existed. It will bring people into your life offering shortcuts that seem irresistible. And in each of these situations, you'll have to choose between pleasing God or pleasing men. Don't make the same mistake I made. Don't think you can manage God's blessing with men's wisdom. Don't think you can build a prosperous kingdom ignoring the King of Kings. Don't imagine you can have lasting success without keeping your heart close to the one who is the source of all success. Seek prosperity, yes. Fight for it, work for it, apply wisdom to conquer it. But never forget that it's a means, not an end. It's a tool to fulfill greater purposes, not an objective in itself. And most importantly, never forget that the greatest treasure you can have isn't what's in your vault, but the one who's in your heart. Because I had everything and almost lost the only thing that really matters. And I can guarantee you, it's not worth it. Number 8, the door only the reader can open. We've reached the end of this conversation, and I need to leave you with the most important truth of all. The prosperity you so desire is on the other side of a door. But this door has a unique characteristic. It can only be opened from the inside, by you. No one else can do this in your place. During all these years observing humanity, I've seen people waiting for someone to come open this door for them. I've seen people praying for God to open it supernaturally. I've seen others waiting for luck, the government, family, the boss to come with the magic key. All waiting outside, complaining that the door is locked, without realizing that the key has always been in their own hands. This key has a name: decision. Not just any decision, one of those you make and change your mind the following week. It's an irrevocable, definitive decision that changes who you are inside. It's the decision to stop living like everyone else and start living like someone who understands the principles of prosperity. Gold already exists, abundance is already created, opportunities are already available. God has already released everything you need to be prosperous. The only thing missing is you making the decision to become the person who can receive and manage all of this. Because here's what most people can't understand. God won't give prosperity to someone who thinks like the poor. He won't give abundance to those with a scarcity mentality. He won't give wealth to those who haven't developed the character to sustain it. He waits for you to become worthy of what you're asking for. And being worthy doesn't mean being perfect. It means being willing to grow. It means having the courage to change. It means taking total responsibility for your life. It means stopping blaming circumstances and starting to create new circumstances. Throughout our entire conversation, I've shown you the principles that transformed my life. I've revealed the secrets that made me the most prosperous man in history. I've told you about my mistakes so you don't have to make them. I've warned you about the traps that destroy even the most successful. But knowledge without application is useless. Wisdom without action is worthless. Truth without transformation is meaningless. You can know everything about prosperity and remain poor. You can understand all the principles and remain in the same situation, because knowledge without decision is just useless information. The question that defines everything isn't whether you understood what I said. It's whether you'll do something with what you understood. It's not whether you agreed with the principles. It's whether you'll apply them in your life. It's not whether you were inspired. It's whether you'll move. Because inspiration without action is just entertainment. And you didn't come here to be entertained. You came because something inside you knows you deserve more, that you were made for more, that you can achieve more, and that something is right. But deserving isn't enough. Believing isn't enough. Wanting isn't enough. You need to decide. And when you truly decide, when you make this irrevocable choice to become prosperous, everything in your life will start organizing itself to make this decision reality. Your attitudes will change. Your priorities will change. Your habits will change. Your choices will change. And when you change on the inside, your situation on the outside will have no choice but to change too. So answer me now, with complete honesty. Will you leave here and return to life as usual, or will you use this moment as the milestone of your transformation? Will you continue being just another person who knows what they should do but doesn't do it? Or will you be someone who transforms knowledge into results? The door is in front of you. The key is in your hand. On the other side is the prosperous life you always wanted. But no one can cross over for you. No one can decide for you. No one can change your life for you. The only question that remains is, will you open this door? Or will you spend the rest of your life wondering what your life would have been like if you had the courage to open it? The choice is yours. The moment is now. And on the other side of this decision is everything you've always wanted. There is a moment in every person's life when they stand before the mirror and recognize they're no longer the same person they were when they woke up. Not because of what happened to them, but because of what happened inside them. That moment has arrived for you now. You can feel it, can't you? Something changed while we talked. A seed was planted in soil you didn't even know existed inside you. And this seed won't stop growing. It will work silently, day and night, transforming everything you thought you knew about yourself. Because truth has this power. When it touches your heart, no matter what you do afterward, you can never again pretend you don't know. You can never again be content with less than what you discovered was possible. You can never again live as if you hadn't heard the call that echoes inside you. And now you understand why this video isn't for everyone. Why only the strong make it this far. Because it's not easy to carry the responsibility of knowing you were made for more. It's not comfortable to discover that your mediocre life is a choice, not a destiny. But you made it this far because you have the necessary strength. Because inside you exists someone who's tired of accepting crumbs when called to banquets. Someone who's ready to assume the identity that was always yours, but that you spent years denying. If these words touch something deep in you, if you feel this conversation is just the beginning of a much larger journey, join us on this channel. Because what you experienced here today is just a sample of what's to come. The seeds we planted continue growing, the truths we shared continue echoing, and the awakening that began never stops. The prosperity you always wanted isn't a distant destination. It's a present decision. And this decision is being made now, at this exact moment, inside you. You can try to resist. You can try to go back to what you were before. But the seed has already been planted. And when God plants, nothing can stop it from growing.